I've been thinking about something lately, and the topic came up on one of my group coaching calls. And the concept I've been thinking about is just how a lot of the failure that people have in life and business, especially, comes from not quantifying their data, right? So, what do I mean by this? What I mean is that, well, let me give you an example. Okay, so I was talking to one of the guys in the Well That Never Runs Dry coaching call today, and he's a real estate investor, and he's trying to get real estate deals, wholesale deals. So what that basically means is he's calling people who maybe are in foreclosure. He's looking up a list of potential properties. He's calling up owners and he's asking them if they're willing to sell their property, right? This is a pretty common thing to do to wholesale properties. And then at that point, he could sell the property to an investor and make a profit on that with the difference between the prices, or maybe he buys it and holds it himself as a good deal as a rental property. It's a good strategy. It's a decent way to make money. And today he asked me on the coaching call, he said, "Hey, John, I'm making a lot of calls, but am I doing something wrong? How do I know if I should give up, or how many calls I should make? And can you help me with this, right?" And so I asked him. I said, well, what are the numbers? Like, how many calls are you making? How many calls have you made? And then what does your pipeline look like? How many people that you called responded? How many people answered the phone? How many people did you call back? How many responded? How many people were cold leads that didn't seem like they were going to sell? How many were warm leads that might sell? And how many were hot leads that wanted to talk to you more? And then how many calls did you get on with those hot leads? And then how many deals did you get, right? And he kind of guessed at some of these numbers, right? So, he said, well, about 5% of the leads are hot. And then, out of those, I get 40% of them would be deals. Well, when I ran the math on that, it turned out that was probably not accurate, because I asked him, I said, well, how many deals do you want to get per month? And he said 3. So I said, okay, well, and here's some useful math, by the way, if you're going to use these numbers here. If you want to figure out the percentage of something, or how many numbers you need from a percentage, all you have to do is divide by the percentage. It's pretty simple, but it's something that a lot of people don't really know, right? So, for example, if he tells me that 40% of the deals or the hot leads that he talks to end up becoming a deal, then if I want to know how many people does he have to have hot leads in order to get a deal, all I have to do is take the 3, right, because he wants 3 per month, and divide that by 0.4, which is 40%, which gives me 7.5. So he needs 7.5 hot leads per month. Okay, well, if he's telling me that 5% of the people he calls are hot leads, end up being hot leads, then I can take that 7.5 and I can divide that by 0.05, that's 5%, which equals 150. So that means that he would need to do 150 calls in order to get the 3 deals. Well, that's not what's happening. So his numbers are not right? So his problem is that he needs to actually have a spreadsheet where he's calculating all these numbers so that he can have an accurate depiction of that. And the reason why is because if he wants to get those 3 leads, or those 3 deals per month, then he needs to know roughly how many calls does he need to make in a month in order to get that. And I'm going to guess that it's a lot more than what he's saying he was doing. He said he was doing 75 to 100 calls a day, or he had a VA that was doing 75 to 100 calls a day, right? So obviously his numbers are not right, because if 5% were hot leads, he would have gotten something like 27 deals in a month, which does not happen. So ultimately he's frustrated, right? Because he's making all these calls and he's not seeing results, and he's not able to connect the action to the result. And so really that's what this video is about, okay? The thing is, the thing that frustrates you, the reason why you give up, is because you're not able to connect the action to the result, okay? And so you have to be able to do, because the thing is, when you can't connect the action to the result, you're just kind of swinging in the dark, right? You don't know. You could be, you've probably heard the idea of being 5 feet from gold. You could be 5 feet from gold, but you have no way of knowing that because you don't know how much of something you need to do in order to get the result that you want, right? But so many times in life, and this is something that I'm guilty of myself, right? This is why I've been thinking about this a little bit, is because when I was telling him about this, I sort of realized, wow, I'm kind of doing the same thing, right? So let's just take an example here, right? Let's just take even that program, the Well That Never Runs Dry, that I sell. Okay, if I wanted to make a certain number of sales per month on that program, then I need to know when I put out, for example, a YouTube video, if I were advertising the program, how many views do I get on average on a YouTube video? And then how many of those views would translate into someone booking a call? And how many of those calls booked would show up, and how many of those people that show up would actually buy the program, right? So if I have all those numbers, then I can know what to do. For example, for that program, I was doing some YouTube videos on it, but mostly I would say that most of the advertising on that comes from Instagram. So I have Instagram Reels, and then I get roughly a certain number of views. But if I were smart about this, and I should be, okay, I would get the analytics for all of these things, and I would know exactly how many views I need in order to get a sale. And once I know exactly how many views I need to get a sale, how much is my motivation going to go up to create content that will get me views? And it's not quite as simple as straightforward as that. Obviously, different types of views with different types of people and different things that you're talking about do make a difference. But for example, let's say that I standardized the leads or standardized the input, which is something I told him as well, because he gets his leads, as far as the people he's calling, from different categories of people. Some are foreclosures, some are like tax deed things from the bank. There's a various types of vacancies for a long time. There's various things, and some of those leads have a higher percentage of hot leads, and some don't, right? So some are more effective, right? But let's say I standardized, and let's say that what I measured was, I said every time that I made a financial type of video on Instagram, okay, let's say I measured the views that I got from that, and then I took that chunk of videos and I made it so that I could tell whether a lead came from one of those videos, and then I measured it out and I said, okay, how many leads did I get? How many of those people booked calls? How many of those calls ended up becoming a sale? And so on and so forth. Then I could reverse engineer that. And I could say, hey, for every 50,000 views I can get on financial related videos on Instagram, I will get a sale. Now, what happens to my motivation to create videos when that happens? Well, all of a sudden now I'm like, well, shit, I should just create a whole bunch of videos. If the more videos I create, the more people I reach and the more sales that I'm going to get. Or maybe I should increase the quality of these videos so each video gets more views, so I put more time into each video. And you can see how this can apply in so many areas of your life. But specifically in business, if you're struggling, you need some quantifiable data in order to understand what it is you need to do in order to get that result, right? Now, this assumes that you have a business model that actually works, that you do have ability to make a sale, right? If you don't, at this point, your first job is to figure out some way to make a sale, right? Whatever it is, some way to have an end-to-end system where you're going to get leads, you're going to market those leads or have some kind of offer to those leads, and you're going to have a product to deliver to those leads. That once you have that in place, then you can apply all of this math to that, right? But there's so many things that this factors into in life. You could apply this to a diet program, right? You can track your protein and know that how much protein results in how much muscle gain over time, right? You can track that in terms of the miles that you run right now, and everything is not going to perfectly work here, but you can generally use these numbers, especially when it comes to things that do have a pipeline, right? If it has a pipeline, you absolutely can do this, right? So for example, the same thing with dating, right? With let's say that you're going out and you're talking to girls, and this is something that I coached a lot of guys on, right? And I would track the numbers for them, right? Because if you track the numbers, you can know that if you talk to X number of girls, you're going to have some of these girls like you, and some of these girls will go on dates with you, right? It's just simple mathematics. But if you don't know the numbers behind this, then you're going to get frustrated. You're like, oh, well, I talked to a whole bunch of girls. Or one day, you're going to have variations, right? Because there is some luck involved, right? Because there's some volatility, right? You have to know a little bit about the statistical significance. So you have to have enough data, right? And you have to realize there's going to be some variability. But if you have data and you understand the statistical significance, then you can know whether something's going to be in one or two standard deviations of a particular result, right? And all I'm saying with that is that I mean that what is the likelihood, right? Most things are going to fall into a general category of number of actions in order to get a result, right? So, for example, again, going back to the calls, if it is the case that 100 calls on average results in one deal for the guy in my coaching program, then it might be true that he might have to do 150 calls or 200 calls to get a deal because he could be fairly unlucky, or he could get it in 75. But it's certainly not going to be 500, and it's probably not going to be one, right? It could be one. It's very unlikely. But the likelihood of it taking just one call or two calls in order to get a deal is very low, and the likelihood of it taking 500, of it going 500 calls without a deal, is also very low. So, but when you add this all up, right, it's always going to average out to roughly the number, and so that just makes life a lot easier. And like I said, it's something that I have to really put into practice myself, because I forget about this, right? If I were starting up a new business today, I would track everything. I would have very good tracking in place so that I would know exactly, what are the analytics on this, right? How many views am I getting? How many pieces of content am I creating, right? And I would track how is that ending up in a result, right? And if I know those things, that's going to motivate me to be able to do the actions in order to go forward with that. And it is something that I do struggle with now, because sometimes it can really feel like you're doing a lot of stuff and you're not seeing results. Or, like I said, the worst thing is when you feel like the stuff you're doing is not connected to the results. And it is connected to the results. You just don't know how. If you mathematically understand how the actions you're taking are connected to the results, then you're going to have the motivation. Now, if you want some help with this, if you're interested in some of my coaching, I do have the Well That Never Runs Dry program. It is available. The best way to get into that program is to DM me on Instagram, because I have a sales team that handles that. So they'll probably get on a call with you, just full disclosure. Like I said, I'm not doing any kind of, spammy marketing anymore. And if you want to do some one-on-one coaching with me, I do have a few slots that are open. You can just email me at john@bulldogmindset.com. But, if you can't afford either of those things, you can always support me and learn a lot of stuff by joining the Bulldog Mindset membership. There's a link down below there. I've got just a ton of content, like 200 videos on all kinds of topics, from mindset to fitness to dating to real estate, and everything that you can think of there, and just a ton of stuff there. And I'm going to probably reboot this membership in a little bit and actually raise the price. So now would be a great time to get in. I'm going to let everyone who's in at whatever price be grandfathered into that. But yeah, measure, figure out, before you give up on things, and know, right? There's so many instances where people give up too early because they haven't done the work to measure. But if you can measure and you can know that if I do this action, I will get this result, your motivation for doing that action will increase dramatically, and you'll be able to control your results, right? It's crazy how much work you'll do when you know that you're getting an action for that, right? So, for example, you might not be motivated right now. Let's say you're doing sales and to make sales calls, right? Because you don't know, like, you're just kind of calling up people, and then sometimes you get a sale. But if you knew for a fact that every 50 people you called, you got, let's say, one sale, and you got a couple $1,000s, you would be calling like crazy, because you would know all I have to do is do 50 today. If I do 50 more, I'm going to get paid again, right? And that it is so true for so many things. If you're creating apps and you're putting in the app store, how many apps do you have to do in order to make so much passive income? If you're writing books and your Amazon books and you put them in the Kindle store, how many books do you have to write? If you are buying real estate, right? How much real estate do you need to buy? How many deals do you need to find in order to have enough passive income, right? How much does it increase your passive income every month? All of these things are quantifiable. And if you understand those things, it is going to get you the motivation. And like I said, it's something I need to do myself. That's why I'm telling you this, because it will help me a lot. But I'll see you tomorrow.